Questions for reflection. After having been commissioned in Antioch, Paul and Barnabas set out on mission. In our first reading, we have a portion of Paul's first recorded sermon in the temple. It's very similar to the first sermon of Peter in the second chapter of Acts. Paul sets the context for proclaiming Jesus Christ as the promised Messiah, Christ in Greek, the Anointed One. He explains that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law, the prophetic insights of the psalmist David, and messianic promises of the Hebrew prophets. He gives this sermon in the synagogue on the Sabbath day, invited to do so by the temple elders. Imagine how this might have seemed. By now, word of the rabbi named Saul, the great persecutor of the early followers of Jesus, the one who stood approvingly at the stoning of the deacon Stephen, but now, he's now using a new name and proclaiming that Jesus, the promised Messiah. And he did so with such authority and power. How? Once again, by the power of the Holy Spirit. Even though he was not at that first Pentecost, Paul certainly experienced the same encounter and came to know of its powerful, transformative effects. Read Romans 8. The Holy Spirit capacitated the early followers of Jesus to go from being a frightened fraternity to a band of brothers and sisters of whom it was written, they turned the world upside down. Acts 17:6. They were empowered to carry forward in time the ongoing mission of Jesus until he returns to complete the work of redemption. And we are now numbered among them as that mission continues. How are we participating in the continuing missionary work of the church? The psalmist in this messianic psalm sings of the oath God made with David and the promise God made to establish his kingdom. The Holy Spirit speaks through David. My hand will always be with him, my arm will make him strong. No enemy will be able to outwit him, no wicked man overcome him. I shall establish his power over the sea, his dominion over the rivers. So I shall make him my firstborn, the highest of earthly kings. And this promise is fulfilled by Jesus, the Christ of the lineage of David, the promised Messiah of Israel and of all the nations. This was and is a central claim of the church. The evangelist Matthew, in the gospel he wrote, begins with these words, and I quote, "The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham." Our gospel today immediately follows what is called the mandatum or mandate, the wonderful moment at the Last Supper after Jesus instituted the holy sacrifice of the Mass and the ministerial priesthood, when he got up from table and washed the feet of his disciples, a sign of his self-emptying love. Then he commanded us to do the same. Jesus said, "In all truth I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, no messenger is greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know this, blessed are you if you behave accordingly." Love is a verb. Foot washing expresses what living a Eucharistic life, a life of self-emptying love, is meant to look like. Pope St. Leo the Great once wrote of Jesus, quote, "He took the nature of a servant without stain of sin, enlarging our humanity without diminishing his divinity. He emptied himself. Though invisible, he made himself visible. Though creator and Lord of all things, he chose to be one of us mortal men. Yet this was the condescension of compassion, not the loss of omnipotence. So he who in the nature of God had created man became in the nature of a servant man himself." End quote. Do we view ourselves as servants of the Lord? Do our lives reflect that view, our behavior? Are we loving with our actions?